Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Janaea Talks Caps podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And today we are going to be recapping what was a great game for your Washington Capitals against the rival Penguins in Pittsburgh. So the Caps, for their part, they are 2-1 against the Pens so far this season. And more importantly, they've won the two most recent games, scoring 10 goals against the Penguins in the process. And, you know, even in the first game of the season against the Pens, which that first game being the one that the Capitals lost, the first game of the season, by the way, between the two teams didn't even come until Super Bowl Sunday, which was back on February 2nd. So we had to wait quite a while to see the Caps and Pens face off. It was well worth the wait, of course. But yeah, that first game back on February 2nd, I thought that the Caps easily could have won that game as well. The Penguins, they had 6 power plays in the game to Washington's 3, and the Caps still only lost by a single goal, staging a third period comeback that fell just short and losing by a 4-3 score. And that's kind of been a theme in these games between the Caps and the Pens, is the discrepancy in the number of power plays doled out to each team, with it always weighing heavily in favor of the Penguins. This is not a new thing, of course. We've seen it for many years now. And the Pens, like I said, you know, they had 6 power plays to Washington's 3 in the first meeting of the season. Pittsburgh again had 3 power plays to just 1 for Washington in the second meeting of the season. And then in this most recent game, their third meeting of the season, Pittsburgh again had a whopping 5 power plays and an almost 2-minute long 5-on-3 opportunity thrown in for good measure as well as a goddamn penalty shot that Braden Holtby nonchalantly kicked aside as if to say, you know, get the fuck out of here, you flightless squawking fucknuts. All of this for the Pens, and only just the one single 5-on-4 power play opportunity for the Caps, despite the Caps heavily outplaying the Pens at even strength and spending most of the game at the Penguins' defensive end of the rink, controlling the play and dominating possession time, which does usually lead to power play opportunities, unless, of course, your opponent is the Pittsburgh Penguins, in which case you consider yourself lucky to be given even just the one single power play. So we'll talk about all of this later on in this episode. You know, the officiating, the Caps' super performance on special teams, and the Caps' dominance at even strength as well, as these were the big points of the game. But yeah, the point is, I thought that the Caps easily could have won that first meeting of the season as well, and now they've won the next 2 meetings, and they have looked mighty fine in doing so, scoring, like I said, 10 goals against the Pens in these most recent 2 meetings. They won by a 5-3 score on February 23rd, coming from behind and scoring 4 goals in the third period. And then, of course, on Saturday at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh, the Caps won again. This time it was by a 5-2 score in a game that was never really even close. The Caps won up 3-0 in the first period, and Braden Holtby could be seen making snow angels at the other end of the rink just to have something to do, as the Caps doubled up the Pens in shots despite, like I said, being heavily on the short end of the stick when it came to power plays. So it was a hell of a game by the Caps, and we'll get into a full recap and analysis in just a moment here. But first, I just want to point out that if these 3 games against Pittsburgh so far this season have taught us anything, it's that, number one, we should not be scared of facing them in the playoffs. In fact, we should actually be pretty damn excited about the possibility, as it's a good chance for us to come out on top of them again with the way that we've played them through the 3 meetings this season. And number two, the reason that we should be excited about possibly playing them in the playoffs is because facing off against Pittsburgh seems to be exactly what the Caps need in order to get back to their identity once again. They get up for these games against Pittsburgh. They want to beat them, and the Pens want to beat us, and that brings out the best in the Caps when they feel like they really have something to play for. So, you know, it's a long 82-game season. It can get a bit monotone at times when you're playing the Buffaloes and the Detroits and the Floridas of the league. Playing against the best brings out the best in the Caps, and whether or not the Pens are actually one of hockey's best teams or not at the time, it's never seemed to matter. The Caps hate them, and they hate the Caps likewise, so it's hockey's biggest rivalry. And like I said, said that seems to be, exactly what the doctor ordered for the Caps, as in these two most recent meetings with the Penguins this season. The Caps have come in during a bit of a slump both times when they're not playing very well. They've been playing sloppy and things are slipping, and yet when you see Pittsburgh on the calendar, suddenly everything goes back to normal. They go back to playing Caps hockey. So that's what we saw on Saturday, Caps hockey. That's what we saw a couple of weeks ago on February 23rd against them, Caps hockey. It's the perfect remedy for all that ails you when you're the Washington Capitals facing off against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And that's what I'm hoping to see moving forward, is that this huge win on Saturday is going to get them back on the right track, because it reminded them again of the way that they have to play in order to be the most successful. It reminded them again of, what it looks like when they play to their team identity. And it looks pretty damn good. Big, strong, fast, extremely physical, skilled, extremely detailed, and defensively responsible hockey. Defense leads to offense, 5-man units all over the ice through all three zones. That's the way they won the Cup less than 2 years ago. That's the way that they can win it again this year if they execute on it once again. And we were all reminded on Saturday of just how effective it is when this roster plays that way. So through the 3 meetings with the Pens so far this season, by the way, the Caps have done exactly what I want them to do physically. And that's, they've out-hit the Pens by a wide margin in those games, and it's not even close. The first game, for example, the Caps launched 47 hits at the Pens compared to just 24 hits thrown by the Pens. The second game, 45 hits by the Caps, 35 by the Pens. And the third game on Saturday, another 45 hits by the Caps compared to just 26 this time for the Pens. So those are playoff numbers being put up in regular season games by the Caps, and it should excite you because it shows us that they're still totally willing to play that way when it counts. It should also excite you because of how effective they are and how often they win when they play that way. There's not a team in the NHL that can match the physicality, the size, or the strength of this Washington Capitals lineup. We know that it works in the playoffs. We saw it in 2018. They just need to execute it once again. And hopefully having a longer offseason this past year to heal all of those bumps and bruises that never really do go away after you play into June and win the Stanley Cup. Hopefully that will help as well. So anyways, getting back to Saturday's win in Pittsburgh, the Caps play at even strength was monstrous. They were all over the Pens. All 4 lines were dominant. Ilya Kovalchuk absolutely blew up Brandon Tanev with an open ice hit. Yes, Ilya Kovalchuk does that. He's a Washington Capital now, and he is fitting right in. It was also poetic because if you remember, Tanev was also the one who concussed Evgeny Kuznetsov a while back with a chicken wing elbow to the head. So it's a little bit of Russian justice there. And sweet vigilante justice, how we love you. Anyways, in this game, and really, in all games, the 4th line for the Caps was absolutely dominant. It didn't matter who they were matched up against. They saw time against Sidney Crosby's line, against Evgeny Malkin's line. Even a few shifts where Sullivan had Sid and Malkin out there together, it did not matter. The 4th line for the Caps was absolutely dominating. They hemmed the Pens in their D zone all afternoon long with a ferocious forecheck that Pittsburgh had no answers for. And they racked up 3 goals and 6 points in the process. So Nick Dowd, he scored the first goal of the game for either side less than 2 minutes into the first period with assists from both of his line mates. And it came on a pretty one-timed snipe past Pens goalie Matt Murray. The goal was the end result of a strong forecheck. And in hindsight, it was really just foreshadowing for what was to come in this game. It was kind of the appetizer for an afternoon of aggressive and relentless forechecking by all 4 lines for the Caps. Nicholas Backstrom, he would snipe a high glove on Matt Murray to make it 2-0 with assists from Jakub Vrana and TJ Oshie. And then the 4th line would strike again, this time with less than 2 minutes left in the first period. So they scored, less than 2 minutes into the first period, and then with less than 2 minutes left in the first period. And this time on the 4th line, it was Richard Panik completing a pretty passing play and putting the biscuit in the basket behind a helpless Matt Murray. And honestly, like, can we talk about how good Richard Panik has been lately? He's becoming, exactly what the Caps thought they were getting when they signed him this offseason. The addition of Ilya Kovalchuk, of course, on the right side, that's allowed Panik to move to his natural left wing for the first time this season, and it's already paying huge dividends. Panik, he's got 2 goals, 6 points, and is a +5 in the 4 games since the Caps got Kovalchuk and since he was subsequently moved to his natural left wing position. So the Kovalchuk trade is coming up aces, not only for what Kovalchuk has brought to the Caps, but also for what it's done for Richard Panik's game. It's been huge. And obviously, Kovalchuk, he brings so much to that third line. And when you can bump a guy like Richard Panik down to the fourth line, the depth on this team now is just incredible. And Panik, like I said, it's been huge for him to move to his natural wing. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's really looking good so far. And anyways, the Caps in this first period, so they would outshoot the Penguins 12-6 in the first period, en route, of course, to having a 3-0 lead on the goals by Dowd, Backstrom, and Panik. All of this despite the Pens getting the only 2 power plays in the first period, including a minute and a half of 5-on-3 time, during which they did not manage to muster so much as a shot on net. So the Caps penalty kill was and had to be excellent in this game, thanks to the usual lopsided officiating in Pittsburgh's favor, but we'll get to that later. And there was no scoring in the second period, but then just 34 seconds into the third period, with the Penguins on yet another power play, by the way, Nick Dowd would score his second goal of the game, this one shorthanded and on a pretty feed from ex-Penguin Carl Hagelin. And thank God Carl Hagelin is ours for the next 4 years. Like, he's such a stud, makes such a big difference on the penalty kill. And, the Penguins broadcasters as well, they were just, kind of reminiscing and saying how much that they missed Carl Hagelin on their team. So obviously that was a great trade and a great signing for the Caps. And so that goal, it made it 4-0 for the Caps. And at this point, the Boo Birds were out in Pittsburgh. Sidney Crosby would score his 16th goal of the season, which is really cute because it moved him from 159th in the league in scoring to 140th. So there's only 139 guys now who are better than NBC's self-appointed best player in the world. And Evgeny Malkin would score a power play goal for the Pens on their zillionth power play of the afternoon. They also had a penalty shot somewhere in there too, by the way. But Braden Holtby stopped it. But 4-2, that was as close to as the Pens would get, as TJ Oshie promptly put a stop to the party, scoring his 26th goal of the season just 56 seconds after Malkin had scored. And what a luxury it is to have TJ Oshie and Jakub Vrana, by the way, 2 guys who are each going to score 30-plus goals this season, playing on our second line. That is ridiculous. So anyways, 5-2 was your final score. And the keys in this game were, like I said, superior even strength play by the Caps, a huge physical presence to the tune of 45 hits, many of them of the seismic variety by the Caps, and excellent penalty killing by the Caps as well. The penalty kill really was huge. It's been huge all season long. And the Penguins they were getting really frustrated. They have started this season series by being, the Caps had killed off all 13 power plays that the Penguins had up until the very last one that they got in Saturday's game. They scored on that one. So they're 13 for 14 on the penalty kill against the Penguins this season. So just 1 power play goal for the Penguins in 14 opportunities against the Caps. So Sidney and his boys, they weren't very happy about that. And the Caps, for their part, they didn't really get a chance to have a good power play as the refs only gave them just the 1 go round on it. But they scored 4 goals at even strength to just 1 for the Penguins. And of course, they held the Pens to just 1 power play goal over the course of, like I said, about a zillion opportunities gifted to Sidney's diving squad by the refs. So Let's talk seriously about the officiating for just a second here, because like I pointed out near the beginning of this episode, the discrepancy in the number of power plays for each side in these meetings between the Caps and the Pens is inexplicable. I probably can't explain it. They're just biased towards the Penguins, and it's always been that way ever since Sidney Crosby came into the league, and they felt like they needed to make Gary Bettman's golden little princess look good any chance that they got, and even if they don't get the chance, they will create the chance themselves. That's what it is, right? Seriously, 3 games so far this season between the Caps and the Pens, 14 power plays for the Penguins and just 5 for the Capitals. Like, how do you explain that? Especially when puck possession at even strength has heavily favored the Caps. You can't. You cannot explain it. So all in all, for this game on Saturday, the Pens, like I said, they had the 5 power plays. They had an almost 2-minute long 5-on-3, and they had a penalty shot. The Caps, for their part, they had just the 1 5-on-4 opportunity. That's it. In a 60-minute game, and for the second out of the 3 games against the Penguins so far this season, it's happened in 2 out of the 3 games so far this season between these 2 teams that the Caps have had just 1 power play. So again, someone please explain that to me. The crown jewel of this particular game, as far as the refs were concerned, was definitely Chris Letang sticking Tom Wilson right in the mouth, only to have the refs call a penalty on Wilson as well to even it up, and to avoid giving the Caps a power play, because my God, you can't give the Caps a power play. That's got to be against the rules or something, right? Hey, Mr. Bettman, isn't it against the rules to put Sydney's boys shorthanded? The Penguins' own broadcasters, by the way, they actually said it best, and they are about as biased as it comes when it comes to their Penguins. So if even they are saying it, then you know it really must have been a blown call. But they were wondering out loud on air how Tom Wilson could possibly be getting a penalty for holding the stick there. They asked, how could Wilson be getting a penalty there for holding the stick? Like, what is he, holding it in between his teeth? Letang hit him right in the mouth. Yes, he did. Letang hit him right in the mouth, and Wilson ended up getting a penalty somehow for holding the stick. So Wilson has to go to the box, and we played 4-on-4 instead of the Pens going shorthanded for what would have only been the second time in this game. I'll give the Penguins broadcasters some credit where it's due. They actually did admit throughout the game that the Pens were getting away with a lot of blatant penalties, but then they'd come right back and whine about some stupid shit like, why aren't the Pens getting their second penalty shot of the game here? Why? You want 2 penalty shots in 1 game? Us Caps fans would be lucky if we even got 1 in a season. Like, never mind 2 in a game, you ungrateful fucks. It did not matter, as the Caps were resilient and tough and everything you'd want them to be heading into the playoffs. It was really exactly the game that they needed, and exactly the game that us fans needed to see from them as well. I'm sure that means that they will probably blow it against Buffalo tonight, but hopefully not. No, I'm just kidding. I actually think that Pittsburgh game is going to turn things around for this team. I have 100% faith in this group and all of the players, and I really can't wait to see what they're going to do down the stretch and into the playoffs. So until next time, boys and girls and babes, that's all I've got for you today. And again, thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our show if you haven't already. We're available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, on Google Podcasts, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on Podcast Addict. So pretty much anywhere and everywhere that you would get your podcast from, we are there. So subscribe, share with your fellow Caps fans, leave us a review if you feel so inclined. I always love reading the reviews. And make sure to, of course, tune in tonight as the Caps take on the Sabres in Buffalo. And let's get that W. Let's go Caps!